I was so shocked when I walked into my brother's wedding and realized everyone was pretending I didn't exist, until his best man took my hand and changed everything. The wedding hall glowed with golden light, each crystal on the chandelier reflecting 1,000 glittering sparks across the marble floor. The scent of fresh lilies mixed with the warmth of perfume and champagne, creating a sweetness that made Emma feel lightheaded. She stood near the back, clutching a borrowed clutch purse, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the strap on her shoulder. It wasn't that she didn't belong there. Technically, she was family. But the way everyone looked through her made her feel like an uninvited guest in her own brother's story. Ethan, her older brother by 3 years, was getting married, and as always, he was the center of every room he entered. Their parents beamed at him as if he hung the stars himself. Their mother's laughter echoed proudly, her father's back straight with pride. They were the perfect picture of family joy. Everyone belonged, everyone except Emma. She had received her invitation late, almost as an afterthought, tucked between bills and flyers. It didn't even have her name printed, just guest of family. She'd stared at it for hours that night, wondering if it was better not to go at all. But something deep inside her told her she needed to see it through. She needed closure. Maybe this time her family would notice her, not out of duty but because she mattered. Her dress was simple, pale blue satin that shimmered softly under the light. She'd bought it on sale, pressing it carefully the night before. Her mother had said nothing when she arrived at the church earlier that day, only a polite nod before turning away to speak to Ethan's soon-to-be wife. Chloe. Emma had offered to help with the decorations or set the tables, but her mother had brushed her off. "We already have enough hands, dear. Just try not to get in the way, okay? Try not to get in the way." The words replayed like a whisper inside her skull. She smiled to herself, trying to brush off the sting, but her chest ached. She found a quiet corner near the back of the hall, far enough from the front tables but close enough to watch the ceremony unfold. As the music swelled, everyone rose, their faces shining with tears and happiness. Emma's throat tightened. She wanted to feel happy, too, wanted to be part of this joy. But she couldn't ignore the hollow space that grew wider inside her chest. When the vows were exchanged, she blinked away tears, not just for her brother's happiness, but for all the moments she had been forgotten. The birthdays missed, the calls unanswered, the way her parents never asked about her art exhibitions, her job, or her life. They had always treated her like the shadow of Ethan's brilliance. She'd been the quiet one, the helper, the invisible support. After the ceremony, while guests poured into the banquet hall, Emma tried to blend in. She greeted familiar faces, smiled politely, but most people barely glanced her way. At the buffet table, her aunt whispered to another relative, loud enough for Emma to hear, "Oh, look, she came alone again. Poor thing. Still no one in her life." Another voice snickered. "Well, she's not exactly the type men notice." Emma froze. Her hands shook as she set down her plate, appetite gone. She found a seat near the kitchen door, one of the only empty chairs left, and sat there, pretending to scroll through her phone. Her mother passed her twice, eyes scanning the room as if searching for someone more important. Her father waved to old colleagues but never glanced her way. She felt like air, present but unseen. Then her gaze fell on the man standing beside Ethan, the best man. His name, she overheard earlier, was Liam. He was tall, with dark hair neatly combed back, his black tuxedo fitting perfectly against his broad shoulders. But it wasn't his looks that drew her attention, it was his presence. While everyone else glowed with performance and pride, Liam seemed grounded, warm. His laughter wasn't forced, and when he spoke to people, he looked at them like they truly mattered. As the photographer called for family only, Emma remained seated. Her cousins gathered, uncles and aunts smiled widely, and her parents proudly joined Ethan and his bride. No one called her over. The photographer adjusted his camera, preparing to take the shot. That's when Liam turned his head and frowned. His eyes landed on Emma, still sitting near the kitchen door, and something shifted in his expression, confusion, then disapproval. He walked away from the group straight toward her. "Aren't you supposed to be up there?" he asked in a low, kind tone. His voice startled her. No one had spoken directly to her all evening. Emma looked down, embarrassed. "No one said I should join." Liam's eyebrows drew together. "You're his sister, right?" She nodded. "Yes." He hesitated for only a second before saying firmly, "Then come with me." Before she could protest, Liam gently took her hand and led her toward the group. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. Her mother's eyes widened, her father's jaw tightened slightly, but Liam didn't slow. "We're not taking another photo until Ethan's sister joins in," he announced loud enough for everyone to hear. The photographer blinked in surprise. Ethan looked uncomfortable but forced a smile. "Oh, yeah, sure, come on, Emma." Emma's face burned. She wanted to disappear, yet Liam's grip on her hand was steady, grounding her. He positioned her beside her brother, right in the center of the frame. The flash went off. For the first time in years, she was in a family photo that wasn't cropped out or taken accidentally. As the group dispersed, her mother leaned close and whispered sharply, "You didn't have to make a scene." Emma's throat closed up. "I didn't." "Liam, just sit quietly, please," her mother cut in before turning away again. But Liam didn't seem to notice the tension. He smiled at her warmly. "Now it looks right," he said. "Families should include everyone, don't you think?" Emma tried to smile. "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." "Maybe not," he said, "but it looked wrong without you." For the rest of the evening, Emma couldn't shake the strange mixture of humiliation and gratitude. No one else acknowledged her, but Liam's small act had cracked something open inside her, a sense of visibility she hadn't felt in years. Every so often, she caught him glancing her way, giving her a quick smile or a reassuring nod, like he was silently reminding her that she mattered. When dinner began, she stayed in her corner, avoiding conversation. The laughter from the main table echoed like music she wasn't allowed to dance to. Still, she felt lighter than before. Maybe because someone, even just one person, had chosen to see her. Later, as she stood by the balcony overlooking the garden lights, Liam appeared beside her again. "Beautiful night," he said softly. Emma nodded. "It is." He glanced toward the crowd. "You don't seem like you're enjoying yourself," she forced a smile. "I'm fine. I'm used to it," he frowned. "Used to what?" "Being unnoticed." Liam studied her quietly, as if trying to read the pain she hid so well. "They don't know what they're missing," he said finally. "You deserve better than to fade into the background." Her heart twisted. "You don't even know me." "Not yet," he said, with a small smile that lingered longer than it should have. "But I'd like to." A soft silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken truths. Down below, music swelled again, and laughter rose like wind through the night. But for the first time, Emma didn't feel invisible. Someone had noticed her. Not out of pity, not because of duty, but because they wanted to. As she left the hall later that night, her mother barely said goodbye. Her father was too busy shaking hands. But when she reached the parking lot, Liam's voice called out behind her. "Hey, Emma!" She turned. He stood by his car, smiling softly under the dim glow of the streetlights. "You looked beautiful tonight." The words lingered in the air long after he drove away. She sat in her car for a long time, her heart full of confusion, disbelief, and warmth. She had come to her brother's wedding expecting to disappear again, but instead, she had been seen. And that single act, that fleeting acknowledgement, was enough to begin changing everything she thought she knew about her place in the world. That night, as she drove home under the quiet stars, Emma whispered to herself, "Maybe I'm not invisible after all." She didn't know that this wedding, the day she was supposed to fade into the background, was only the beginning of something far greater. For in being ignored, she had been found. And for the first time, she was ready to be truly seen. The reception hall shimmered with the kind of beauty that made people forget themselves. Gold ribbons cascading down the pillars, chandeliers gleaming like melted stars, and a slow waltz playing through the soft hum of chatter. But to Emma, it all felt like a blur of faces, clinking glasses, and laughter that didn't include her. She sat at the far edge of the room, sipping water she didn't want, watching her brother and his new wife bask in the kind of attention she had never known. Every time her mother's laughter rang out, it carried the same undertone Emma had grown up hearing. Pride for Ethan. Perfection for Ethan. Love for Ethan. Never her. She told herself she didn't mind. But it was hard not to feel the sting when her father brushed past her to toast his beautiful family, naming everyone but her. She smiled through it anyway. That was Emma, always polite, always invisible. The lights dimmed slightly as music changed from soft piano to an upbeat melody, and people flooded the dance floor. Couples spun, dresses swayed, and for a moment the air seemed alive with joy. Emma stayed seated, folding her hands neatly in her lap. She could feel the eyes of a few cousins on her, judging, curious, maybe even pitying. Then, over the sea of dancers, she caught sight of Liam, the best man. He stood near the table where the groomsmen had gathered, laughing at something someone said, but his eyes drifted toward her again and again, as if checking whether she was still alone. She tried to look away, embarrassed, but when she glanced back, he was already walking toward her. His stride was easy, unhurried, confident in a way that drew every eye without him even trying. When he stopped in front of her, Emma's breath caught. "Come on," he said with a playful tilt of his head, holding out his hand. "Dance with me," she blinked, startled. "What?" "Dance," he repeated, smiling. "It's a wedding. You're supposed to have fun, remember?" Her instinct was to refuse. "I don't dance," Liam chuckled softly. "Then I'll make it easy for you. Just follow my lead." She looked around the hall. People were already watching. She could feel her mother's disapproving gaze from across the room. "People will stare," she whispered. "Good," he said, leaning closer. "Maybe it's time they see you?" Her heart pounded. For a second, she hesitated, but then something inside her shifted. Maybe she was tired of being invisible. Maybe she wanted just for one night to be noticed. So she placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, firm and warm, and he led her onto the dance floor. The moment they stepped into the light, the room seemed to hush. Whispers rippled through the guests. Emma's cheeks burned, but Liam didn't seem to notice or care. He positioned one hand at her waist, gentle yet steady, and began to move with effortless rhythm. Emma followed awkwardly at first, stumbling once, but he caught her easily, grinning. "Relax," he murmured. "You're doing fine," she exhaled, letting him guide her. The music swelled, and soon she found her steps matching his. Her dress flowed around her legs as he twirled her lightly, and laughter escaped her lips before she could stop it. Real laughter. Soft, startled, genuine. Liam smiled wider. "See? I told you." For a few fleeting minutes, nothing else existed but the music and his steady gaze. The world that had always looked past her was suddenly watching, but not in mockery. There was admiration, surprise, even envy. Someone near the band whispered, "Who's she dancing with? Is that Ethan's sister?" Another voice answered, "I didn't even know he had a sister." Her parents' faces were tight, her brother's expression unreadable, but none of it mattered. Emma felt light for the first time in years. She wasn't the shadow anymore, she was the spark. When the song ended, applause broke out, half teasing, half sincere. Liam bowed slightly, keeping her hand in his. "Told you we'd make them stare," he said under his breath, eyes twinkling. Emma couldn't help it. She smiled. "You're impossible." "I've been called worse," he grinned. "You hungry?" "Come on." They left the dance floor and slipped toward the open balcony. The night air was cool, fragrant with jasmine from the garden below. Fairy lights hung along the railing, flickering softly. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Emma leaned on the railing, her pulse finally slowing, while Liam poured 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter's tray and handed one to her. "You shouldn't have done that," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "What? Asked you to dance?" "All of it. The photo earlier, now this," she sighed. "They'll think you're trying to be nice to the charity case. He turned to her, brows lifting. Is that what you think you are? Emma froze, unable to answer. Liam shook his head. You have no idea how beautiful you looked out there. Confident, graceful, real. Everyone else in that room was pretending. You weren't. Her eyes stung. You don't know me. Then maybe it's time I do, he said simply. She looked away, her throat tightening. The words felt dangerous, like stepping toward something she wasn't ready for. But there was something about him, his calmness, his honesty, that made her want to believe him. You're kind, she whispered. But you don't have to pity me, he smiled faintly. Emma, I don't pity you. I admire you. There's a difference. They stood in silence again, the soft hum of laughter and music spilling out from behind them. Down in the garden, guests lit sparklers for the send-off. The glow illuminated their faces in flickers of gold. Emma took a sip of champagne, trying to steady herself. You really think I looked graceful? He leaned closer. You were the most beautiful woman in that room, her breath caught. No one had ever said that to her before, not in her entire life. For a moment, she forgot to breathe. Then the DJ called for the bouquet toss, and laughter erupted inside. Emma turned, watching through the glass doors as Chloe, the bride, stood in the center, tossing the bouquet over her head. The flowers arced through the air, bright against the chandeliers, and to everyone's surprise, landed right at Emma's feet near the balcony door. The crowd gasped, then laughed and clapped. Liam glanced down at the bouquet, then at her. Well, he said softly, looks like fate's got a sense of humor. Emma laughed, cheeks flushed, holding the bouquet to her chest. It's just flowers? Maybe, he said, smiling. Or maybe it's something more. Their eyes met again, and this time, neither looked away. When the newlyweds finally left, Emma stood under the twinkle lights by the driveway, holding her small purse, unsure whether to go or stay. She felt the strange pull of something new inside her, an awakening of confidence, of possibility. As guests drifted away, Liam found her again. You're not leaving without saying goodbye, are you? He said, walking toward her. I figured no one would notice, she replied softly. I noticed. He paused, then held out his hand once more. Come walk with me. They walked through the quiet garden paths behind the venue, where the air was cool and the world felt far away. Crickets sang softly. The moonlight fell in pale ribbons through the trees. Ethan's lucky to have a sister like you, Liam said. You really care about him, Emma smiled faintly. I used to. I helped him through school, gave him everything I could. But he doesn't remember any of it. None of them do. That's their loss, Liam said. Not yours. His sincerity made her chest ache. You make it sound easy. It's not, he admitted. But it's easier when someone reminds you what you're worth. Emma stopped walking. And you think that's you? He looked at her, his gaze soft but unwavering. I think you've been waiting too long for someone to choose you. And maybe I just did. Her breath trembled. She wanted to laugh, to brush it off. But she couldn't. There was something real in his voice, something that reached straight into her guarded heart. When the night finally ended, Liam walked her to her car. She stood by the door, unsure what to say. You really didn't have to do all this, she murmured again. He smiled. I didn't do it for them, Emma. I did it for you. And before she could respond, he leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her cheek. A fleeting, gentle touch that left her dizzy. She drove home that night with her heart pounding so hard it drowned out the radio. For the first time in years, she wasn't crying over being ignored. She was smiling because someone had seen her. Not the quiet sister, not the forgotten daughter, but her. She didn't know where it would go, but she knew one thing for certain. That night, something inside her had changed forever. Weeks turned into months, and the memory of the wedding faded like a distant dream. Except for Emma, it wasn't something she could easily forget. It had marked a turning point, a quiet revolution in her life. Since that night, Liam had stayed in touch, first through short texts. Did you sleep well? or thinking of that dance, and then through daily calls that made her laugh for reasons she didn't understand. He was patient with her silences, gentle with her hesitations, and never once treated her like a project or a secret. For Emma, who had spent most of her life shrinking herself to fit into invisible corners, that simple, constant presence was something entirely new. She began to breathe differently. She smiled more often, even when she was alone. Liam had a way of making her feel seen even without words. When they met for coffee one weekend, he noticed the faint paint stains on her fingers. "You paint?" he asked. She laughed shyly. "Sometimes. It's nothing serious." But the following week, he showed up at her apartment with a set of professional brushes and a canvas wrapped in brown paper. "For when it becomes serious," he said. That night she painted until dawn. Her strokes were bold and free, as if each one wiped away another layer of the old hurt that had lived in her chest for years. As the months passed, Emma and Liam fell into an easy rhythm. Long walks on Sunday mornings, shared dinners after work, quiet evenings where they didn't need to fill every silence. For the first time in her life, Emma felt what it was like to be genuinely cared for. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but out of love. Liam saw her potential, encouraged her to start selling her art, and even helped her set up a small online gallery. It was slow at first, but one morning she woke up to an email, her first sale. The name of the buyer didn't matter. What mattered was that someone wanted what she had created. Her confidence grew. She spoke differently now, firmer, lighter. She laughed louder. Even her posture changed. She no longer curled inward as if to make herself smaller. When she passed mirrors, she didn't look away. She saw someone new, someone proud, self-assured, radiant. One afternoon, while she and Liam were having lunch at a quiet restaurant, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan. Family dinner next Saturday. Chloe's promotion celebration. Everyone's invited. She stared at the message for a long moment. Her stomach twisted, not out of fear but out of memory. The last time she had been around them, she had been invisible, unwanted. Liam glanced up. "Everything okay?" She handed him the phone. He read the message, then met her eyes. "Do you want to go?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "Part of me wants to ignore it. But another part of me—" He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Maybe it's time they see the version of you they chose not to see before." When the day arrived, Emma almost backed out. She stood before her mirror, smoothing the fabric of the dark green dress she had chosen, a color that made her eyes glow and her skin look like soft gold under the light. Her hair fell in loose curls, her makeup subtle but elegant. She looked nothing like the quiet, uncertain girl who had once sat alone at a wedding table. When Liam appeared behind her in the reflection, adjusting his tie, she caught her breath. "You ready?" he asked softly. Emma nodded. More than ever. The dinner was held at her parents' house, a place that once felt like home but now looked like a stranger's memory. When she and Liam stepped inside, the conversation around the table stopped for a moment. Her mother's eyes widened, her father stiffened slightly, and Ethan looked both surprised and confused. Chloe, her sister-in-law, forced a smile. "Emma, you made it." "I did," Emma said evenly. "And this is Liam." Liam shook hands politely, his presence commanding yet warm. Her mother's voice trembled slightly as she said, "Oh, you brought someone." "Yes," Liam said, smiling proudly. "Emma's the best thing that's ever happened to me." The silence that followed was sharp, broken only by the clinking of silverware. Chloe exchanged glances with Ethan and her father cleared his throat awkwardly. "So how have you been, Emma? We don't hear much from you these days." "I've been good," Emma replied calmly. "Really good." She looked around the table, her gaze steady. "I've been focusing on my art. My gallery just hit its first milestone last week." Her mother blinked. "Gallery?" "Yes," Liam said, smiling at Emma. "She's an incredible painter. She's even sold a few of her works to collectors overseas." Ethan laughed nervously. "Wow, didn't know you were still doing that." "Guess it finally paid off, huh?" Emma smiled faintly. "Yes, it finally did." Throughout dinner, she noticed how uncomfortable they seemed whenever Liam spoke about her achievements, as though her success disrupted the neat hierarchy they had always maintained. Her parents kept trying to change the subject, steering the conversation toward Ethan's new house, Chloe's promotion, or the family's upcoming holiday plans, none of which included Emma. But this time she didn't flinch. She didn't try to insert herself into their world. She simply smiled, listened, and radiated calm confidence. When the plates were cleared, her father poured everyone a drink. "A toast," he said, raising his glass. "To family." Emma raised hers too. "To family," she echoed, her tone steady but her eyes sharp. "And to finally realize who belongs in it." The words hung in the air. Liam placed his hand gently over hers beneath the table. Her mother set her glass down. "Emma, what's that supposed to mean?" Emma took a breath, the kind that carried years of swallowed pain. "It means I used to think I needed your approval for everything I did. For years, I believed I wasn't enough unless you said I was. But now I know I never needed your permission to be proud of myself." Her father shifted uncomfortably. "You're overreacting." No one ever noticed," Emma interrupted, her voice calm but unwavering. "Not when I gave up my graduation for Ethan's exam. Not when I skipped birthdays to work overtime so I could help him pay for school. Not even when I showed up at the wedding and sat by the kitchen door." The room went silent again. Every word landed heavily. "I used to think it was my fault," she continued softly. "That maybe if I tried harder, if I smiled more, if I stayed quiet enough, you'd finally see me. But you didn't. And that's okay now because I see myself." "That's enough." Chloe shifted in her seat, avoiding Emma's eyes. Ethan looked pale. "Emma, you could have said something." "I did," Emma said simply. "You just never listened." Her mother looked at Liam, perhaps searching for help, but he only smiled politely. "Emma's stronger than you realize," he said gently. "She doesn't need saving anymore." Emma pushed her chair back slowly. "Thank you for dinner. It was enlightening." She turned to Liam. "Shall we?" Liam rose with her, his hand finding hers effortlessly. As they walked to the door, Emma paused and looked back one last time. "You know," she said quietly, "for years I thought I needed revenge to move on. But now I realize my happiness is my revenge." No one spoke. Her mother's eyes glistened, her father's jaw tightened, and Ethan looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Emma smiled, not cruelly but with peace. "Good night." Outside, the night air was cool and clean. The stars shone like quiet witnesses. Liam opened the car door for her, and as she slipped inside, she felt lighter than she had in her entire life. As they drove away, she leaned her head against the window, watching the house shrink into the distance. Liam glanced at her. "You okay?" Emma turned to him, her lips curving into a serene smile. "More than okay." She rested her hand on his arm. "You know, for so long I thought being ignored was my curse. But maybe it was my gift. It taught me to see what others couldn't. It led me to you." He smiled, squeezing her hand. "Then I guess I should thank them." She laughed softly. "Maybe." As they reached the city, the lights blurred like strokes of color on a canvas. Emma thought about all the years she had tried to fit into a picture that was never meant for her. Now she was painting her own, one filled with color, warmth, and purpose. That night, when they arrived home, she stepped out of the car and looked up at the stars again. For the first time, she didn't feel small under their vastness. She felt infinite. She had spent her whole life waiting to be noticed, but now she didn't need anyone's attention. She had found her worth, her peace, and her voice. And that, she thought with quiet certainty, was the sweetest revenge of all.